This lesson is going to be on adding and subtracting radical expressions. It's pretty important. You learned it in Algebra 1, and you'll see it a lot in Algebra 2 in the first semester. So you'll be using it quite a bit. We've used it a little bit this year, and I know you guys had a hard time with it. So let's take a look and see how we could add things up, or when we could add radical expressions. Now, when you think about basic algebra, we are able to add and subtract terms if they had like terms. So if I had like x plus x, I would be able to add that up and get 2x. So the same thing pretty much applies right here in with radicals, except what you need to understand, and let me label things. Let's go ahead and take a look at the square root of 5. That right there we call is the radical. And if there's no number on in front of the radical right here, then we know this is a square root or the second root. The 5 right here, or whatever's underneath the radical, is important. We will call that the radicand. Okay, so anything underneath the radical itself, okay, we will be calling the radicand. So let's just say not necessarily the number 5, but anything underneath the radical is the radicand. So in order for us to add radicals together, they must have, the radicand must be the same. So if we take a look at number 1 right here, if I look, we got rad 5 plus rad 5. Now the coefficient in front of both of these happens to be 1. Okay? So if the coefficient is 1, then what we end up doing is we add the ones together. And so what this simplifies down to, it's not the square root of 10. Okay, we don't add the radicands together. This ends up being 2 rad 5. Okay, so we will add the coefficients if the radicands happen to be the same. Let's take a look at the second one we have right here. In our second problem, we have rad 2 plus rad 8. We have right here two different radicals, or radicands. So what do? We have to be able to get the same radicand. Now, this is where the challenge comes when it comes to these problems. Now, if I look at the first term is rad 2. And so most likely, or what we're going to have to do is somehow with 8, I have to be able to get myself rad 2. Well, how could I do that? Maybe we can simplify this. All right, so that's the key right here. How are we going to be able to do that? Now, remember, let's think about first off, what are some factors of 8? 8 and 1, 2 and 4. So by figuring out what are some of those different factors there, that will help us come up with our answer. Because what I'm going to do is let me go ahead and take this rad 8 and think about two perfect square, or two factors, one of them being a perfect square, and it'll be 4 times 2. Right? When I take the square root of 4, that's 2, and that'll go on the outside. So what this will turn into right here is 2 rad 2. Now we have ourselves 2 radicands that are the same. So we have rad 2 plus 2 rad 2. And when we put that all together, we will now have ourselves 3 rad 2. Make sure you guys know how to simplify these. I will not be taking decimal answers. All right, so you got to know how to do it. Okay, so let's go ahead and try number 3. We'll do the same thing. I look right here. The first term has a radicand of 2, and most likely we're going to have to do the same thing with this. Okay, so it will be the same thing. Remember, this part right here from the last question we know is 2 rad 2. Now with this 2, and the 2 that's already on the outside, hopefully you remember, these two parts right here, you're going to have to multiply them together. So now 2 times 2 is 4, and so I have 4 rad 2. So we have 6 rad 2 minus 4 rad 2. 6 minus 2, or 6 minus 4 is 2. And so our solution right here is 2 rad 2. Let's take a look at our last example together. We have 3 different terms, and we're going to have to figure out, hey, how can I simplify this? All right. So let's start off with that rad 18. And I'm looking at the different radicals or the radicands, and look, 2 happens to be the smallest one. So most likely, not all the time, but in these problems right now, there's a good chance that all your radicands will be 2 or have to be 2 in order for us to add and subtract things together. So this right here, remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. When we're adding and subtracting, they're on the same level, so you're going to have to go from left to right. And hopefully, we think about, well, with 18, some factors of 18, perfect square factors, 9 and 2. The square root of 9 is 3. That 3 we multiply by with this 2, and so we will have ourselves 6 rad 2. With the square root of 8, 2 factors of that, 4 and 2. Square root of 4 is 2. Multiply that with the negative 3. So we will have negative 6 rad 2. And there's nothing more we need to do with the 5 rad 2. So we have ourselves 3 terms. We're going to subtract it first, and then we'll go ahead and add things together. 6 rad 2 minus 6 rad 2, well, that's going to cancel out. And so what we're left with is 5 rad 2. All right, there are some steps here that you're going to need to make sure you show in your homework. Make sure you show how you can, what you need to do with your radicals. How some of these radicals you are going to have to simplify or break apart so that the radicands can be the same for you in order for you to add and subtract. So hopefully I will see that from you in your homework so you can get full credit.